"No wonder you're still single at 31, my mother announced to the entire Thanksgiving table, her voice carrying that precise blend of pity and accusation she'd perfected over decades. "You don't even try anymore." The crystal wine glass froze halfway to my lips as every pair of eyes around our family's mahogany table locked onto me. My sister Natalie's hand tightened around her husband's wrist. Uncle Richard suddenly found his cranberry sauce fascinating. The carved turkey steamed between us, forgotten. "When I was your age," Mom continued, swirling her Cabernet like it was liquid ammunition, "I'd already given your father 3 beautiful children. But you're too picky, too independent, too happy," I finished softly, setting down my glass with a deliberate click against the heirloom china. "My name is Olivia. I'm 31, and I work as a creative director. This is the story of how I stopped apologizing for my happiness." The dining room fell silent, forks suspended midway to mouths. Even my niece and nephew looked up from their tablets. My father's knife scraped against fine china as he continued cutting his turkey, pretending not to hear. He'd perfected the art of selective deafness years ago. "Actually," I said, reaching for the silver pendant that hung at my collarbone, "I've been married for 3 years." I pulled the chain from beneath my dress. A white gold wedding band caught the chandelier light, spinning slowly between my fingers. "You just weren't invited." The family photo from Natalie's wedding, where I stood at the edge, barely in frame, slipped from my mother's perfectly manicured fingers. It hit the marble floor with a crack that split my carefully posed smile right down the middle. "That's impossible," she whispered, color draining from her face. "I would have known. Someone would have told me." I reached for my phone, swiping to a photo I'd looked at 1,000 times but never shared. There we were, me in a simple white sundress, wildflowers in my hair, barefoot on a beach in Olympic National Park. Beside me stood Ryan, his smile brighter than the setting sun behind us, our hands clasped with matching bands catching the light. "June 15th, I said, passing the phone to my frozen father. 3 years ago, 60 guests, people who actually love us. This hadn't been an impulsive revelation. I'd rehearsed this moment for months, calculating the perfect time to detonate the truth bomb I'd been carrying. After 3 years of secrecy, I'd timed it to this exact Thanksgiving dinner, when my mother would inevitably launch into her favorite topic, my persistent failure to meet her expectations. My sister found her voice first. "You're lying," Natalie accused, her surgeon husband's arm draped possessively over her shoulders. "This is some desperate attempt for attention." "His name is Ryan McAllister," I continued, watching my mother flinch at the surname. "He's a pediatric nurse. Saves children's lives every day." I met her eyes directly, feeling the power shift between us with each word. "His parents own that restaurant in the International District, the one you called ethnic when we drove past it last Christmas. They catered our wedding. Best dim sum you've never tasted." My brother James pushed back from the table, chair legs scraping against hardwood. "You kept this from us for 3 years? Your own family?" Family? The word tasted bitter on my tongue. Was it family when Mom told me no man would want a woman who worked such long hours? Was it family when you all took bets on whether I'd end up alone with cats? I turned to my father, whose face had gone slack with shock. Was it family when Dad said I was the practiced child and thank God they got it right with you two? My father's face flushed crimson. "Olivia, that's not—" "Ryan proposed after 6 months," I interrupted, "in his parents' restaurant, with his whole family cheering. His mother cried and called me daughter that night. His father said he'd never seen Ryan so happy." I felt my voice steady with each revelation, years of rehearsed restraint crumbling away. "His sister asked me to be her kid's godmother before we even set a date. They didn't care that I worked late. They didn't judge my ambition. They celebrated it." My mother stood slowly, gripping the table edge with white knuckles. The diamond tennis bracelet Dad had given her for their anniversary glinted under the chandelier light, another perfect accessory for her perfect life. "You married some nurse without telling us, without asking?" "Asking what?" I tilted my head. "Permission? Blessing." I laughed, but it came out sharp. When have you ever blessed anything I've done? When I graduated summa cum laude, you asked why I wasn't dating. When I got promoted, you said successful women intimidate men. When I bought my condo, you worried I was settling into spinsterhood. We only wanted what was best, Aunt Patricia started, her voice syrupy with manufactured concern. No, you wanted what looked best. A doctor, a lawyer, someone from the club, someone you could brag about at brunches. I stood, matching my mother's height in the heels she'd once told me I should always wear to compensate for my plainness. Ryan volunteers at free clinics on weekends. He reads to sick kids during his breaks. My voice softened, not for her benefit, but because speaking about him always mellowed me. He learned to cook Grandma's recipes from that stained cookbook you threw away. He holds my hand during scary movies and brings me coffee in bed every Sunday. He sees me, actually, sees me, not as a project to fix or a disappointment to manage, but as someone worth choosing every single day. Natalie's husband shifted uncomfortably. Still, 3 years of deception. Deception? I unclasped the necklace, sliding the ring onto my finger where it belonged. The only deception was pretending you were the family I needed. Our real family includes his parents, his sister, our friends who stood with us that day. My mentor from work who walked me down the aisle because I knew Dad would spend the whole time wishing I was more like Natalie. Our neighbor, Mrs. Yamamoto, who taught me to make Ryan's favorite soup when he had pneumonia. That's family. This is ridiculous, my mother sputtered, her carefully applied lipstick bleeding into the fine lines around her mouth, sneaking around like teenagers. We didn't sneak, I corrected. We lived. Sunday dinners at his parents' place where no one counts my carbs or mentions my biological clock. Holidays where people ask about my projects with genuine interest. Birthdays where the gifts aren't self-help books about finding a man. I could see them calculating, reevaluating me. For the first time, I wasn't the failing daughter. I was something unknown, someone who had escaped their narrative. We traveled to Prague, Tokyo, New Orleans, I continued, cataloging the life they'd missed. We adopted a rescue dog named Biscuit, who's probably curled up on our couch right now, wondering why I insisted on coming here tonight. Why did you, James asked quietly, come tonight? I looked at the shattered photo frame at my family frozen in their shock. Because I'm pregnant. 12 weeks. I placed my hand on my still flat stomach, and I realized this baby deserves to know the truth about both sides of their family. Even the side that would have tried to ruin the happiest day of my life with their judgment and conditions. My mother sank back into her chair as though her strings had been cut. Pregnant, she whispered, the word escaping like she'd been punched. Due in May, I said, my voice steady now. Ryan painted the nursery last weekend, soft yellow with clouds on the ceiling. His mother's already knitting blankets. His father's building a crib. I watched my mother's expression crumble further with each detail of the grandchild she'd almost missed. They throw their arms around me every time they see me, like I'm a gift. Do you know what that feels like? To be celebrated just for existing? Tears ran down my mother's face, smearing her perfect makeup. We could have. I would have. Would have what? Planned a wedding you'd control? Invited people I don't know? Made me wear your dress and follow your rules? Told Ryan he was lucky to have me while whispering the opposite to your friends? I gathered my purse and coat from the hallway, hyper-aware of the family tableau behind me. Around the table they sat like a still life. Abundance spread before them, but something essential missing. His parents are having Thanksgiving dinner tomorrow, I said, turning back. 20 people crammed into their apartment, kids running everywhere, 3 languages mixing in the air, loud and messy and absolutely perfect. I paused, the final hook in place. Ryan saved you all seats just in case. I watched my words land like stones in still water. His mother makes extra food every year, hoping this will be the time I bring you. I always tell her you're busy. I looked directly at my mother. She doesn't know the truth, that you're not busy. You're just broken. I moved toward the door, then turned back one last time. You want to know the saddest part? When Ryan proposed, the first thing he said wasn't, I love you or marry me. It was, you don't need their approval, Olivia. You never did. I let that sink in. And he was right. My father finally spoke. Olivia, please, let's discuss this rationally. There's nothing to discuss. You can either accept that I chose love over your approval, or you can keep that photo on the floor with all your other broken things. But I'm done apologizing for being happy. I opened the door to leave, but my mother's voice stopped me. Will you, her voice cracked, will you send pictures of the baby? I looked back at her. This woman who'd spent so much energy trying to mold me into something else, sitting among the ruins of her expectations. Ryan would say yes, I admitted. He believes people can change. He sees the best in everyone, even families that don't deserve it. It's one of the million reasons I married him. I pulled a card from my purse, setting it on the hall table. Our address. Do with it what you want. The November air hit sharp and clean as I stepped outside. I sat in my car for a moment, hands shaking as I texted Ryan. Coming home, bring Biscuit to the door. I need maximum waggle therapy. His response came immediately. Already waiting. Your mom's hot chocolate ready, extra marshmallows. You're brave, baby. Whether they know it or not. I drove away from that perfect house with its perfect gardens and imperfect love. In 20 minutes, I'd be back in our apartment across town, where Ryan and Biscuit were waiting. Tomorrow, I'd wake up in our imperfect apartment with its creaky floors and incredible joy. I'd tell his parents about the baby, and his mother would cry happy tears while his father started planning a bigger crib. They'd argue over names in Mandarin while I helped set the table. And no one would mention my ringless past or question my worthiness. 3 years ago, I married Ryan McAllister in secret, not out of shame, but out of protection. Protection from people who would have poisoned our beginning with their doubts and conditions. We built our life in private, away from my family's scorekeeping and scalar love. I'd made it possible by living in a different part of the city and limiting my family visits to necessary holidays and occasional dinners. I curated my social media carefully, never posting photos with Ryan, using separate accounts for my real life and my family facade. Colleagues who knew both of us were sworn to secrecy, a tight circle of trust that never leaked to my family's social sphere. But tonight I finally understood. It was never really a secret. It was just a love story that began where their limitations ended. And tomorrow, surrounded by people who chose to love us without prerequisites, I'd place my hand on my growing belly and know our child would never have to hide their happiness from anyone. The wedding my mother never attended was perfect, precisely because she wasn't there. The marriage she never blessed became beautiful in her absence. And the grandchild she almost missed would grow up knowing that family isn't about blood or approval or living up to someone else's dreams. It's about choosing each other again and again, especially when the world or your mother says you're not enough. As I pulled into our apartment complex, I saw them in the window, Ryan holding Biscuit, both faces pressed against the glass, waiting. I parked crooked and ran, not caring who saw. He met me at the door, pulling me into his arms while Biscuit danced around our feet. "How did it go?" he asked into my hair. "About as expected," I mumbled into his chest. But I told them everything. I pulled back to look at him, his thumbs wiping tears I hadn't realized were falling. "And I'm home," I said simply, "where I belong." He kissed me then, right there in the doorway with the neighbors probably watching. And I thought about my mother's dropped photo, how sometimes things need to shatter before you can see what really matters. "Come on," he said, leading me inside. "Let me tell you what my mom said when I called her about tomorrow. She's making extra dumplings just in case your family comes. She says hope costs nothing, but means everything." I laughed, really laughed, for the first time all evening. Your mother's an optimist. "She's right, though," Ryan said, hand finding my belly. "Hope does cost nothing. Your family just never learned to afford it." And surrounded by our chosen life, the photos of our real wedding covering every surface, Biscuit's toys scattered on floors my mother would call beneath us, Ryan's scrubs draped over a chair because he saves lives while she saves face, I finally stopped paying the price for their love. Because real love, The kind that celebrates your victories and cushions your falls. The kind that shows up with hot chocolate and waggy tails. The kind that builds cribs and knits blankets and makes extra dumplings just in case. That love doesn't cost a thing. It just requires showing up as yourself and finding people who think that's more than enough. 3 years ago, on a beach with 60 people who understood that, I married someone who knew I was worth celebrating in secret until I was ready to stop hiding in public. Tonight, I finally was. Tomorrow, we'd tell his family about the baby. Next week, we'd start calling him Ryan Jr. or her Little Biscuit. Next month, we'd find out which. And maybe, just maybe, my mother would find our address card and choose hope over habit. 2 days later, I checked my phone to find a brief text from my mother. "We won't be coming to dinner. I need time, but I will be sending a gift for the baby." It wasn't forgiveness or acceptance, but it was an acknowledgement. The first honest exchange we'd had in years. But even if she never fully came around, I'd already found my family. They were waiting for me at home with extra marshmallows and endless love in an apartment where no one ever wondered why I was still single at 31. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles. Zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one. The crisp smell of fresh paint hit me first, then my mother's voice echoing through the hallway of my house that I'd bought 3 months ago and told no one about. I just returned from a lunch meeting when I noticed an unfamiliar car in my driveway and my front door slightly ajar. "And here's where we'll knock down this wall to expand the living room," she said confidently, as if she owned the place. "The natural light will be perfect once we add those floor-to-ceiling windows." My fingers dug into the doorframe as I watched her lead my sister-in-law Rachel and a man in an expensive suit through my living room. The stranger nodded appreciatively, jotting notes in a leather portfolio while Rachel ran her hand over my custom bookshelf, the one I'd spent weekends installing myself. "Finally," Rachel said with that familiar condescending smile. "A property in our family worth showing off. How long have you been keeping this secret, Nora?" My mother didn't correct her. Didn't mention it wasn't hers to show. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "I've been planning to expand our family's real estate portfolio for years. This place is just the beginning." My name is Vanessa, I'm 32, and I built a tech company from my bedroom floor. This is the story of how I reclaimed not just my house, but my entire identity. The taste of copper filled my mouth as I bit my cheek to keep from screaming. Every dollar in this house came from my work. The late nights coding until my vision blurred, the investors who laughed me out of rooms, the 3 years of ramen dinners and secondhand clothes, while my savings grew dollar by painful dollar. The suited man flipped a page in his notebook. "And you're the sole owner on the deed? No co-signers or family claims?" His pen hovered expectantly. My mother's lips curled into that smile I'd known my whole life, the one that preceded every lie she'd ever told about me. "Of course," she said, and I could hear it in her voice. She was about to erase me completely, again. "Actually," I said, stepping into view, "the sole owner is standing right here." 3 heads whipped around in perfect unison. Rachel's jaw slackened. The man's eyebrows shot up. But my mother, her face transformed from confident to panicked in a heartbeat, the flush draining from her cheeks so quickly I could almost hear it go. "Vanessa," she stammered, recovering quickly. "What are you doing here? I thought you were at my minimum wage job? Still struggling to make rent in my shared apartment?" The words came out calmer than I felt. Funny how those stories you tell about me never seem to match reality. Rachel's eyes darted between us, confusion replacing her usual smugness. "Wait, what's happening? Nora, you said you bought this place." "She hasn't bought anything," I said, pulling my house keys from my pocket. The metal caught the afternoon light streaming through my windows I'd chosen, measured for, and paid for. "These aren't copies. They're originals." The man took a half step back, his professional demeanor cracking. perhaps I should— "No, stay," my mother cut in, grabbing his sleeve. Her voice had that razor edge I remembered from childhood, the one that appeared whenever her control slipped. "Vanessa is just confused. She's always been emotional about family matters." A bitter laugh escaped me as I crossed to the kitchen counter and pulled a thick manila envelope from my messenger bag. Confused or prepared? The sound of paper sliding across granite punctuated my question as I laid out the deed, the closing documents, the mortgage approval with only my name in bold black letters. The man picked them up carefully, his expression shifting from interest to discomfort as he verified what I already knew. "These appear to be in order." Ms. He glanced at the papers. "Ms. Lane is indeed the legal owner." Rachel's arms crossed defensively over her designer blouse. "If this is true, then what exactly have you been doing, Nora?" The perfect family facade was cracking in real time, and for once I wasn't the one being blamed for the fracture. My mother's mask slipped further, her voice turning venomous. "Why didn't you tell anyone about this house, Vanessa? Were you planning to keep it hidden forever like some shameful secret?" I almost laughed at the irony. A secret? "Mom, I worked 80-hour weeks for 3 years to afford this place. I kept it private because every time I've shared my success, this family finds a way to claim it as their own." I looked directly at Rachel. "Or tear it down completely." The man cleared his throat. "I think perhaps I should step outside." My mother's manicured fingers dug into his arm. "No, you need to hear me out. This house is meant for the family portfolio. She's being dramatic, as usual." Rachel couldn't resist piling on. "Honestly, Vanessa, it doesn't matter whose name is on some paper. You can barely keep your phone bill paid. This house would be safer in your mother's hands." White-hot rage flickered behind my eyes. They had no idea about the venture capital meetings, the patent applications, the team of 28 employees now working for me. In their minds, I was frozen as the struggling college dropout they could feel superior to. But the suited man, apparently the only one with professional ethics in the room, looked directly at me. "With all due respect, the documentation leaves no doubt. Legally, she's the sole owner." He slid the papers back toward me, and I noticed my mother's hand twitch, as though she wanted to snatch them away. I leaned in close to her, close enough to smell the familiar Chanel perfume she'd worn since I was a child. "You didn't just try to take credit, Mom. You tried to erase me. Again." My voice remained steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. "So tell me the truth. How many more of my achievements have you stolen when I wasn't looking?" The room fell silent. My mother's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. Rachel glanced nervously between us, and in that silence, I felt the weight of bigger secrets pressing down. My mother finally broke first. "You wouldn't understand, Vanessa. I had to protect this family. Everything I've done was for us." I tilted my head, feeling a strange calm settle over me. "Protect us by selling my house behind my back? By lying to strangers and pretending my work is yours?" Her eyes darted to the man, then back to me. Desperation crept into her voice. "You think you're the only one who sacrificed?" "I used your credit years ago, Vanessa. That's how your brother got his business loan. That's how your father kept his practice afloat when the malpractice suit hit. You think you built your life alone? My choices held this family together." My breath caught in my throat. The random credit inquiries, the loan applications mysteriously denied, the years I couldn't qualify for an apartment without a co-signer. It wasn't bad luck or my own failure. It was systematic theft of my financial identity. Rachel's gasp echoed my shock. "You used her name? Without telling her? That's identity theft, Nora." My mother hissed at her to be quiet, but the damage was done. I stepped forward, hands trembling but voice controlled. So every time I felt like a failure, every time I couldn't understand why my credit was destroyed, it wasn't me failing. It was you, draining me dry while telling everyone I was worthless. The man backed toward the door, clearly uncomfortable. "This is a serious legal matter. I cannot be involved in this discussion." He handed me his business card. "Please contact my office when you've resolved your family situation." The door clicked shut behind him, and with it, my mother's grand plan collapsed like a house of cards. Rachel wouldn't even look at her, shaking her head in disbelief. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips, taste metal on my tongue. But instead of breaking down, I stood taller. You tried to erase me, Mom. But guess what? I've been building something far bigger than you can imagine. I kept my voice level, professional, the same tone I used in boardrooms when closing million-dollar deals. And when I reveal it, you'll wish you'd never crossed me. Her face drained of color. She knew I wasn't bluffing. For the first time in my life, I watched fear replace her arrogance. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about every lie, every theft, every betrayal stacked against me over decades. My mother tried to regain control, her voice breaking into familiar patterns. Vanessa, you're overreacting. We're family. We share everything. I cut her off with a laugh so sharp it made her flinch. No, Mom. You take everything. There's a difference. I reached into my bag and pulled out a sleek black portfolio embossed with a silver logo, my company's logo. Inside were contracts, bank statements, and press releases with headlines like Tech Start Names Vanessa Lane among 30 under 30. I laid the documents on the dining table, my dining table, with a satisfying thud. Rachel leaned forward, eyes widening as she scanned the top page. Wait, this says you're the CEO, and these numbers... Her voice trailed off as she calculated the figures, 7 digits where she'd expected none. I stepped closer, my voice calm but carrying the weight of years of pent-up truth. Yes. While you all laughed at me, while you called me a failure, I built a tech company that now clears more money in a month than either of you have seen in your lives. I gestured around the house. And this? It's one of 3 properties I own. Rachel's jaw physically dropped. The color drained completely from my mother's face as she sank into my sofa, her perfectly manicured hand clutching at her throat as if the ground beneath her had vanished. You used my credit. You stole my future. You tried to erase me. I continued, each word deliberate and precise. But you can't erase someone who's already written her own success story. Tears welled in my mother's eyes. Not from remorse, I knew, but from the realization that she'd lost control of the narrative she'd crafted about me for years. You wanted to sell my house? I asked, my voice dropping to a near whisper that forced them both to lean in. Go ahead and tell the neighbors. Tell them your daughter is the founder and CEO of NeuroSync. Tell them you tried to steal from me and failed spectacularly. The room went perfectly still. They both stared at me, but I felt nothing but a profound sense of freedom. The underdog they'd mocked for years was gone. I wasn't their burden anymore. I was their reckoning, living proof they couldn't control me or my story any longer. I picked up my keys and walked to the front door, pausing with my hand on the handle. I'll expect your keys on this counter by morning. Both sets. I didn't turn to look at them. And Mom? Those credit accounts you opened? My lawyers will contact you about those by the end of the week. As I walked out, leaving my mother and Rachel in stunned silence, I felt the sweetest revenge possible. Not in destroying them, but in showing them that despite their best efforts, I had succeeded without them. Sometimes the best revenge isn't making someone pay. It's showing them they never had the power to stop you in the first place. 3 months later, my brother called. He claimed he'd had no idea about the credit fraud, and I believed him. My mother had always been careful to keep her children isolated from each other. The criminal charges against my mother were filed, and while we no longer speak, my relationship with my brother has begun to heal. As for my father, he chose to stand by her despite everything, finalizing my decision to build my own family from people who actually value me for who I am. The image on my phone burned into my vision. Aunt Tina's feet propped up on pristine Hawaiian sand, a fruity cocktail raised in celebration, #BestVacationEver. My thumb hovered over the screen, trembling. 3 feet away, my daughter fought for each breath behind a wall of glass and wires, her 2-pound body almost lost among the medical equipment. I checked our family group chat again. My message from 5 hours ago sat there, naked and desperate. We're in the NICU, please pray. Below it, nothing but Tina's vacation photos. Not a single, "How are you?" Not one, "We're coming." Just empty, silent pixels from the 17 family members who'd promised to always be there. The NICU machine's rhythmic beeping filled the void where family support should have been. I placed my palm against the incubator, the closest I could get to touching my daughter. The nurse had said it would be at least 3 more days before I could hold her. My name is Emily. I'm 31 and a pediatric nurse. This is the story of how I rebuilt a family from the wreckage of betrayal. The irony wasn't lost on me. As a pediatric nurse, I'd spent years comforting other parents through their worst moments, reassuring them that their children would be okay. Now I sat alone in the same hospital where I worked, staring at my phone, refreshing the screen every few minutes, waiting for someone, anyone, to acknowledge that my world was collapsing. It had been a routine pregnancy until it wasn't. One moment I was shopping for nursery furniture, the next I was being rushed into emergency surgery, my baby girl arriving 11 weeks early. My husband Nathan was in Seattle closing a critical project that couldn't be abandoned without financial ruin. "I'll be on the first flight once we sign," he'd promised through tears on our video call. I told him not to worry, that my family would be here. My family. The same people who had never hesitated to call when they needed something. My cousin Olivia, who'd lived in my spare bedroom rent-free for 3 months after her divorce. My brother Parker, whose car payments I'd covered twice last year. Aunt Tina, whose daughter's college application essays I'd edited at 2 a.m. the night before deadlines. My mother, whose medical bills I'd helped with quietly, no questions asked. The hospital cafeteria became my second home. I ate there, slept in the chair next to it, showered in the family center bathroom. Day after day, I watched other NICU parents receive visitors, flowers, home-cooked meals. Their phones rang. Mine stayed silent. By day 7, Sophia, that's what we named her, though no one had asked, was showing signs of improvement. Her skin was still translucent, her body impossibly small, but the doctors spoke of cautious optimism. I captured these moments, these tiny victories, and sent them to the family chat. The messages showed as "read" by everyone. No one responded. On day 31, I was sitting in my usual corner of the cafeteria, a cold cup of coffee between my hands, when my phone lit up. 84 missed calls. My heart lurched painfully against my ribs as notification after notification filled my screen, most from Parker, his last message. "Answer. This is bad." For a moment, I couldn't move. Then something shifted inside me, a strange cold clarity settling where panic should have been. I didn't fumble with the phone. I didn't spill my coffee. I just set the cup down with deliberate care and called him back. "Dad collapsed," Parker blurted before I could speak. "Brain bleed. They're not sure." His voice cracked. "Mom needs you. We all need you. Can you come now?" The words hung between us. Not, "How are you?" Not, "How's the baby?" Just, "We need you." "I've been in this hospital for 31 days, I said, my voice unfamiliar to my own ears. "My daughter weighed 2 pounds when she was born. I told all of you. I asked for help." "Things have been busy," he said. "Tina just got back from Hawaii. We thought you didn't want visitors." A laugh escaped me. Hollow. Brittle. Right. Because silence is so much less overwhelming than support. "Emily, please, this is Dad we're talking about." And this is my daughter we're talking about, the one none of you have asked about, not once. I paused, hearing the machines beeping in the background of my life. I hope Dad pulls through. I really do, but I'm not leaving Sophia. You'll have to handle this one without me. I hung up as he was still speaking. The phone immediately rang again. Then the text started. Panic, guilt, anger, all of it pinging against a wall I hadn't realized I'd built until that moment. As I deleted each message, one by one, I felt something calcifying inside me. For years, I'd been the family's foundation, the one who remembered birthdays, who answered 2 a.m. calls, who never said no when someone needed help, but they'd left me alone when my daughter was fighting for her life. That night, I sat beside Sophia's incubator, watching her tiny chest rise and fall. "I don't owe them anything anymore," I whispered, and the truth of it settled into my bones. The next day, while Sophia was getting stronger, I made 3 phone calls. First, to the student loan company managing my nephew's college fund, the one I'd been quietly contributing to since he was 14. I canceled the automatic payments. I had all the account information saved in my password manager, so the verification process took just minutes. Next, to the property management company handling my cousin Olivia's apartment, the one where I'd been covering the temporary rent shortfall for the past 4 months. I stopped the transfers. They recognized me immediately since I was listed as an authorized payer on her account. Finally, to the medical billing department handling my mother's physical therapy, the sessions I'd been paying for since her surgery last year. I removed my card from the account. I'd set up the payment plan myself when she couldn't afford the co-pays after her insurance only covered part of the treatments. I didn't leave notes. I didn't send warnings. I just withdrew the support they had taken for granted, as quietly as I had provided it. The reaction was immediate. First came the confused messages. Hey, did the payment not go through? Then the gentle probing. Just checking in, how are you? Then the thinly veiled panic. We need to talk about the arrangement we had. I read each one without responding. My phone rang with numbers I didn't recognize, likely family members I hadn't spoken to in months, suddenly remembering I existed. I let them all go to voicemail. When people realize the person they've been leaning on has stepped away, they don't reflect. They scramble. They don't miss you. They miss the version of you who always said yes. Meanwhile, Sophia gained 2 more ounces. The doctors removed her CPAP, and she breathed on her own for the first time. These were the victories that mattered. 3 days of silence later, a text from my grandfather appeared. Call me tonight. Alone. He had always stayed out of family drama, but evidently someone had told him what was happening, probably my mother during one of their weekly calls. I hadn't spoken to him in months. He was never one for family drama, preferring to observe from the periphery. When he did speak, though, people listened. That night, I stepped outside to a bench near the ER entrance and called him. He answered immediately. I know everything, he said, his voice steady. I know no one visited. I know Tina went to Hawaii. I know Parker is now calling everyone complaining you've turned cold. I didn't ask how he knew. It didn't matter. I'm rewriting my will, he continued without preamble. I've watched them circle around me for years, pretending to care, angling for inheritance, giving nothing back. But what they did to you and Sophia, that was the line. My breath caught. Grandpa, I'm not doing any of this for the house, the Vermont property, the investments. They're going to Sophia, not to you, to her. She's the only innocent one left in this family, the only one who deserves a clean start. I stared at the streetlight above, its glow blurring through unexpected tears. I didn't expect anything. I know, that's why it's going to her. His voice softened. They think you need them, but you were the only one keeping this family together. The moment you stopped carrying them, everything started to collapse. The next morning, my phone exploded with notifications, screenshots, blurry photos of legal documents, outraged messages. Apparently, my grandfather had called a family meeting, distributed copies of his new will, and walked out without discussion. As the executor of his estate, he had every right to make these changes and inform the family directly. No one mentioned Sophia. No one asked how we were. It was all about property, fairness, accusations, and what had I said to turn him against them? I ignored it all, focusing instead on the weight of my daughter against my chest as she napped, her heart monitor beeping in steady rhythm. The burden I'd been carrying wasn't financial. It was the exhausting weight of being the one who always showed up while everyone else took. And they still didn't understand. 3 days later, while the family chat continued to burn with recriminations, I finalized the plans I'd been quietly making. A job had opened at Children's Hospital in Colorado, where Nathan had been offered a permanent position after we discussed relocating there months before the birth. The role was part-time and flexible, with a relocation package and, most importantly, a spot in their NICU follow-up program for Sophia. I told no one except Nathan and Sophia's primary nurse. I didn't owe anyone else that information. 2 days before our flight, I finally responded to the group chat, not with words, with a photo. Sophia in her car seat, 2 packed suitcases visible in the background. The responses were immediate. Where are you going? Tina. Wait, what is this? Are you moving? Olivia. You're seriously doing this after everything? Parker. After everything. As if I was the one who had disappeared when needed most. I didn't respond. The next day, we were on a plane. Just me, Nathan, and our daughter. I held her the entire flight, her tiny body finally strong enough to leave the hospital, her future stretching out before us. That night, in our hotel near our new apartment, Nathan scrolled through the messages from my family and asked if I wanted to block them all. Not yet, I said. I want them to see what life looks like without me. Over the next few weeks, I posted occasional updates. Sophia's first nap in her new crib, her checkup at the new hospital, a video of her smiling at the ceiling fan. I could see them watching, the view counts, the profile visits, but they remained silent, observers to a life they were no longer part of. Then came the letter from my grandfather, handwritten, delivered to our new address that only he knew. He had asked for it privately when I called to let him know we were moving, and I trusted him enough to share it. I'm proud of you, he wrote. I haven't told the others yet, but I've made another change. The trust is being divided early, not just in the will. Sophia's portion will be transferred into an education fund available only to her. No co-signers, no family members can touch it. The last line made me pause. They took your kindness for granted. Now they'll see what happens when that kindness goes somewhere else. I folded the letter and placed it in Sophia's memory box, next to her first NICU photo. The family didn't fall apart immediately, but piece by piece, things began to unravel. Olivia posted about needing help with rent. Tina hinted at selling her condo. Parker's son was pulled from his private school mid-semester. I saw it all through the social media accounts we still shared, though we no longer interacted directly. I didn't celebrate any of it. I didn't even respond, because the truth was, I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. 6 weeks after we moved, the attempts to reconnect began. Likes on old photos, vague comments on Sophia's updates, testing the waters. Olivia cracked first, a 5-paragraph email that danced around the word sorry, like it was radioactive. She wrote about how hard things had been, how no one really understood how serious it all was. She said she'd been thinking about Sophia and hoped one day they could reconnect as a family. She had found my new email through my unchanged professional contact information that I kept public for work purposes. I'd love to get to know her, she concluded. I think she deserves to know her roots. Roots. She didn't mean history. She meant access. Proximity to Sophia, to the money, to the life she could see from the outside looking in. I didn't answer. A week later, a package arrived from Tina. Baby clothes, all too big, and a teddy bear with a gold ribbon that smelled of her perfume. The card read, "For my little princess, with love from your great-aunt Tina. Let's let the past go." She must have gotten our address from my grandfather, who was still in contact with both sides despite everything. I put it all back in the box and stored it in the closet. Then Parker showed up, unannounced. The doorbell camera notification lit up my phone while I was cleaning bottles. He stood there, hands in his jacket pockets, staring up at the door. I later found out he'd gotten our address from Nathan's company website, which listed all their senior staff's locations. I hesitated, then opened it. "I was passing through," he said, though we both knew he wasn't. I waited. "We miss you," he finally managed. "You don't miss me," I replied. "You miss the version of me that paid your bills, picked up the pieces, and kept everything from falling apart." He didn't deny it. "Mom's been asking about you," he tried. "She's confused. She thinks this is all a misunderstanding." Was she confused when Sophia was in the NICU and nobody showed up? He had no answer for that. He looked at me like he wanted to say something else, maybe beg, maybe lash out, but instead he just nodded once and turned away. That night, as Sophia slept against my chest in the nursery, the soft glow of her nightlight filling the room, I felt something I hadn't in months. Peace. They could try every angle. Guilt, nostalgia, fake warmth. It didn't matter because I'd finally understood the truth. Love isn't proven in emergencies. It's proven in the quiet days, after, when there's no drama left to solve and no audience to impress. It's in who shows up and who disappears. My family showed me who they were when they didn't show up at all. So I stopped waiting. I started building a new circle. Neighbors who helped carry groceries, colleagues who dropped off meals, friends who checked in without wanting anything in return. These people had no obligation, no blood connection, yet somehow they showed more love than those I'd shared DNA with for decades. Months passed. Sophia flourished. Her cheeks rounded, her laugh came easily, her future brightened. The specialists confirmed what I already knew. She was thriving. One morning, I received a voicemail from my grandfather. "They still don't get it," he said, "but that's not your burden anymore." He sounded tired but content, at peace with his decision. That weekend, Nathan and I took Sophia to a mountain cabin. We left our phones in a drawer and watched the sunrise over snow-covered peaks, our daughter bundled against my chest. They will always want back in. They will always test the boundary. But I will always remember the silence in that NICU room, not filled by strangers, but by the absence of people who should have been there. And I will never forget what that taught me. Not every family deserves a second chance. Some just deserve a closed door. As for my father, who had the brain bleed, he recovered after surgery, though with some lingering effects. My mother still cares for him at home. Our relationship remains severed. I send birthday cards to them both, but we haven't spoken directly since that day in the hospital. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. The divorce papers that Nathan and I had been considering before Sophia's birth were never filed. Her premature arrival reminded us what truly mattered, and we've been stronger than ever since. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.